Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Freedom Equation podcast. My name is Michaela Bell.
And I'm Scott. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, actually.
That's why we have coffee. Morning.
Yeah, your morning routine. Have you ever felt the pressure to have the perfect morning routine?
Yes.
Me too. But, okay, quick story time.
Okay.
This was the moment that I realized I needed something in my life. Malin had, my daughter Malin is 11 now, but in kindergarten, every single morning, it was chaos. Trying to get her off to school, get her dressed, breakfast.
Every day for me too. Same.
And I don't know what it is, but they never put their shoes on.
My son hates socks more than anything in the entire world. He has to put them inside out, and then he has to tuck his pants into them, and then go through 7 pairs to figure out until one feels good. Might be a sensory thing, but to me, it's just absolutely insanely annoying.
Yeah, so I then found myself yelling a lot in the mornings. And there was one day in particular, I was so angry. I snapped at her a couple of times. You know, like kind of typical mom stuff. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm not putting myself down, or I know that I'm a great mom, but I had so many moments that day. So when I pulled in after dropping her off to school, I sat in my car and I just said to myself, I can't do this every day. It's not good for her.
Yeah.
It's not good for me. And every single morning I feel like I'm stressed out, but I'm not a morning person. Mm-hmm. That's what I would tell myself all the time. I'm not a morning person. My mom, morning person. I mean, she wakes up singing. Yeah. You know, and I've never been that way. So I never identified with the whole morning person thing. I read a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Have you ever read that?
You know I haven't read.
Okay.
I don't read books. But I will think about it now because you always recommend good books.
It's a great book. But pretty much it was a short book, very easy to digest. And it was like 6 different things to do every single morning. And it was 10 minutes for each thing. So things like one of them was like scribing, which is journaling, visualization, movement, like things along those lines. So I totally went all in on having this morning routine. I got up an hour before I used to. And it really did change my life in so many ways because I was much more calm. And by the time Malin got up, I was ready for the day. Mm-hmm. I was ready for her. Mm-hmm. And things definitely seemed to go significantly smoother. Have you had a moment like that of like, okay, something needs to change here?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily if there was a moment as much as what I continuously find in life is that it's important to have structure. It's also important to be okay with the fact that the structure constantly also changes.
Always, yeah.
And so for me, there was a season where when I was building my business and I had a full-time job, I'd wake up crazy early, or when I was doing a lot of my YouTube stuff at the time, I'd wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and edit vlogs or whatever, all the way up until basically I had to do my real job because that was the only time I could. So I was but that was more like in the hustle culture side of things, where then I quickly realized like, okay, well, that's not sustainable. And that was also before I had kids. And that's, you know, when you have kids and you're doing all that kind of stuff, the only time you get to relax is at night. So if you have to go to bed at 8 o'clock to wake up at 4 o'clock, you basically have no life. So that's impossible. So I don't know if there was necessarily a moment, but I definitely can relate to realizing like, hey, I need to at least have a game plan in the morning. What is kind of the main things I want to try to do, or in my case, and I think we talked about this in other podcasts, what gets me in a good mindset in general. Yeah. Maybe it's not even necessarily a routine, but maybe it's, you know, reading the Bible. Maybe it's having a cup of coffee and consuming nothing, like just relaxing and having quiet, whatever it is. Trying to figure that out has been kind of what I have spent more time doing, and not necessarily linking it to, I have to be up 30 minutes before, 60 minutes before, 45 minutes. I have to, it's like, maybe not. Yeah. Maybe I just have to just try to, because I'm the same way. You can be very irritated. I would say I'm actually much more of a morning person But you can be very irritated in the morning, and one little thing can start the day. And with kids, sometimes that little trigger can be something just so dumb.
Right.
And then your whole day feels off. Then by the time you start your work, you're just annoyed. And so it is important to try to think about those triggers.
Yeah, I like that point. And I like what you said too about seasons, because I started doing this thing from the book, which is very much so like me, where I get super stuck on, I have to do it exactly this way because this is what that book said. And I started feeling guilty a little bit later on, after I had realized this doesn't work for me exactly as is. And I had to break that a little bit and like tell myself, like, it's okay that that works for Hal.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't work for Michaela in this new season of life. Because when Malin was in kindergarten, I was a sort of entrepreneur. I was in network marketing, so it's like, I don't want to piss anybody off, but it's not really being an entrepreneur because there's no reason to go into that exactly. But then I was working 9 to 5, and then I became a true entrepreneur with my own products, ideas, everything from the ground up myself. With every single one of those seasons, I have had to adjust my morning routine to something that worked for that season of my life. So I like that. That's what you said, that word, seasons.
I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but they were talking about how, which I know is true in my life, sometimes you'll go through a season where you'll say, I'm going to try this morning routine, or I'm going to try this planner, or I'm going to try this thing. And it works really, really well for a short amount of time. And then suddenly it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it can be easy to kind of beat yourself up and be like, gosh, I just can't stick to anything. But the honest truth is, maybe you can't. And you need to just ride the wave of what's working as long as possible until you need to change it up.
And then shift.
Because sometimes the things that get me super creative, that work really, really well for a while, just suddenly fade. And I need to figure out what the next thing is. And I need to realize that just because, you start using a paper planner and it's life-changing for you and you recommend it to me, doesn't mean that it's going to work for me.
Right.
Or it doesn't mean that just because you started waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or this one entrepreneur that you follow wakes up at 4 every day and he works out for an hour and eats 13 bananas and 6 cups of coffee, and then he's, done with all his email by 8:15. Like, guys, it's not for everybody.
Right.
And it's important to understand your routine and the importance of understanding that it's probably not like someone else's, because of the fact that your seasons play a huge factor into that.
Huge.
Having kids changes your nights and your mornings drastically different than when you don't.
Yes.
And working for yourself versus working a 9 to 5 job drastically changes what you can. If you have a commute or you don't have a commute, drastically changes.
Yeah.
And so understanding what can I do in the season that I'm at to make incremental steps, especially if you don't have any morning routine, maybe there is a little bit of a step. Hey, I'm going to at least try before I leave that house to do this and this. Work on those little things.
Right.
And then just figure out what's realistic. Going from 0 to 100 is the problem I think people get themselves into.
I agree.
They wake up, they run out the door last second, they're like, you know what, I need to have a better routine. I'm going to start waking up an hour early. You snooze for 55 minutes. How about try 15 minutes early at first and try to get in that rhythm. It's just not that easy to just turn a switch on and instantly be a different person.
Well, because that's not how habits are actually formed.
Yeah, no.
The way that the brain and the body actually creates change is through very small, incremental, seemingly insignificant changes.
Yep.
So, yes, if you would like to get up, I don't know, like let's say right now you're getting up at 8 a.m., it's probably a good idea to maybe start at 7:30 and work your way.
See if you like that.
Yeah, and then once that almost kind of becomes easy, or like, yes, this is manageable, I feel pretty good about this, then make it 7 and wake up the first time that your alarm goes off. Because again, your body and your brain is always like looking for patterns.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, if this is a pattern, I keep doing it over and over and over again, I'm just going to hardwire this into the system. So if you keep pushing snooze, when you first hear that alarm, your brain says,
Push
push snooze.
Yep.
Like it just goes into automatic. This is what I do.
That's why I can't stand when I hear people that are like, I set 14 alarms because I snooze so much. Then you got to train your brain differently.
Yes.
Because that's not working. Because what
Correct.
happens the time that you actually need to wake up for an alarm
Mm-hmm.
and you don't, because your brain has told you that sound means a temporary
Mm-hmm.
distraction and let's go back to sleep.
Yeah.
An alarm's supposed to wake you up.
Yes.
So wake up.
Yeah.
Put the alarm somewhere else, whatever it is. This idea of snoozing all that just ends up screwing you in the long run. Because as soon as you have an actual responsibility you need to be at,
Yep.
you're late for.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff it's your own fault.
I know. And that usually starts in like college, I feel like.
Uh-huh. And
Where-
not to mention, it's also just dumb thinking. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to set my alarm an hour early so I can snooze more. Well, you're just not sleeping as long. You could have just had 45 better
Yeah.
minutes of sleep
Yep.
and woken up
Mhm.
versus having 45 minutes of 7-minute little intervals
Increments.
of tiny sleep. Like,
Yeah.
it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird mindset. I don't know.
It is.
But anyway, let's talk about people that want to have a better morning routine. Some of the ones that maybe we've done that we have said maybe worked only for a season for us, but there's some that can be, because everyone, it's all over the map. If you look at
Mm-hmm. It really
some
is.
of the most famous routines, they're crazy. Some of them you're like, how in the world?
Yes.
There's some people, their morning routine is that they get out of bed and immediately they're working and they're in it.
Mm-hmm.
I have operated that way at times, but not
Mm-hmm.
usually.
Yeah. So the first one that I started with was Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. And so it's 6 different activities that you do for 10-minute increments at a time.
Which is a long time.
It
That's
is
an hour.
a really long time, which is why it didn't necessarily
Yeah.
work great for me. But it did teach me the importance of having structure.
Mhm.
Now, if you are somebody like I have ADD, we're not sure if you do, but
pretty sure I do.
probably pretty sure.
Probably pretty sure. Thanks, Michaela.
Now, here's the thing too, like a lot of creatives do.
Yeah, they do.
And it can be your superpower. But with that being said, if you are a creative, structure is a friend of yours.
Mhm.
And we often think of it as like we don't like structure. But what structure can allow you to do is to be creative, truly.
Mhm.
So for me, what I took away from having those 6 different things was I need some type of structure. So for me now, it's slightly different. I don't wake up nearly as early as I used to. But there's a couple of things that I first do. The first thing is I have a glass of water with a little bit of lemon
Mhm.
in there. So and I have a full glass before I'm allowed to drink my coffee. That's like a new thing for me. And then I walk the dog and I get natural light
Mhm.
into your system. And what that does is
What if
it
it's
helps
raining?
you. It doesn't matter.
You still do it? Okay.
Yep. It does not matter. It's more so just that natural
Mhm.
light and also breathing in fresh air.
Mhm.
So what that does is it resets your circadian rhythm,
Mhm.
which pretty much just says, okay, I'm awake. I'm ready for this
This is the
day.
morning. This is the beginning.
This is the
yeah.
morning. This is
Mhm.
the beginning of the day. Then I have my coffee and a little quiet time
Okay.
for myself. So those are my 3 main things that I do for myself. And what I've actually found, I used to go to the gym right after I dropped Malin off to school, but I'm creative in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I've stopped doing that.
Stop taking her to school. You're like, I'm really creative in the morning, so this school thing
gotta
is
go.
gonna have to. This is just an inconvenience. Figure it out yourself. All right, you're old enough.
I mean, she does walk to school.
I've stopped that. Oh, that's good.
I still take her to school, promise. I feel like this episode is Michaela's a bad mom episode.
Just keep reminding yourself that's not what it is.
Just kidding. No, I don't go to the gym in the morning anymore.
Yeah.
I call it my morning work session.
Okay.
And honestly, I have started getting so much work done in the morning. And then during my like afternoon break is when I go to the gym.
Now, do you find what type of work do you want to do in the morning? Because like as a business owner, you have a lot of different work that you have to do, right? You have your email, you have follow-up, you have invoicing, you have accounting, you have creative actual work, you have brainstorming future work, you have following up. There's a million different things.
Yep.
So I found just the importance of understanding what tasks I do
That's a really good
when
point.
play a huge role.
Yep.
So like for you, what are the tasks that you want to do first?
Yeah. Anything creative,
Mm-hmm.
anything that has to do with writing,
So no admin-y stuff. It's literally
Zero.
just the stuff that you're thinking about, brainstorming, working on.
yes.
Yeah.
And the admin stuff that I don't like doing is I habit stack it after I do something that I have a good habit
That gets
with.
your dopamine fix in.
Yep. So I do it after I work out.
Mhm.
So I come home, I do a load of laundry, and then I get to my
That's a
admin stuff.
buzzkill.
I know,
Laundry.
but I'm on a high from working out.
Yep.
So I just real quick do that.
Yep.
And then that's when I do my admins and my email stuff, the stuff I don't like to do. And then the last third of my day, I get back to work.
Yeah, and in a future episode, we're going to talk all about focus and technique, and because that's obviously a big, huge part of it.
Huge part of it.
But yeah, I definitely think that it's important to. We've touched on this many times before. Really, the importance of understanding. Some people are better off waking up and right away doing the things they hate the most, just so they get it done, and then the rest of the day can continue to get better and better. Other people cannot function that way. They have to
cannot.
do the things that give them tons of excitement and
Yes.
dopamine that says,
Yes.
what a fantastic day this is. And then quickly be like, hey, like they try to trick their brain into
Yes.
thinking that this is enjoyable, see? And
Yes.
they're like, no, it's not. But you're on that high of excitement. And some people need to really evaluate their time and try to figure out what are those energy producing things, and even how long do I have
Yes.
with the energy it normally gives me.
Yes.
Understanding that maybe you're incredibly creative first thing in the morning, but even for you to understand like when that starts to kick off, or is there a certain amount of time that lasts that we're going to talk in the next episode about, maybe 25-minute intervals and 5-minute little pauses or whatever. Everyone's going to be different in that. There's no exact science to it.
Right.
But the importance of really understanding kind of how long that lasts. And when it starts to die down, it's like if you're naturally tired, you reach for caffeine, right? You have to
Right.
figure out what your caffeine for your brain is.
Yes. And I actually do. So with all my coaching clients, I don't coach in business except for like course creation, but I coach women in personal development arena. And so I have them do energy tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a week, this is like in the very first couple of weeks that I work with them, they have to track their energy and their mood throughout those 7 days, because you'll start to notice your patterns.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And you don't realize how
you have-
crazy strong they are.
it's
Yep.
wild. And
Yep.
for women, it's a little bit different just too, because of our hormones and the way that our cycle is. Every single phase is a little bit different for us. Whereas guys, your week to week is going to be pretty similar based on the way that your body works. Women is very different. So
Is there a tool that you use for that? Like how do they track their stuff?
their phases. Yeah. So I usually have them read a book called Do Less.
Okay.
And that explains everything, but I also teach them a lesson on it. So usually this phase is about this many days, this one's this many days. So like, for example, one of the phases is called your luteal phase, and your hormones are most poised for detail work. It's why women, some weeks, they're like on top of it. On top of everything. They've got the energy for it. It's like knock off their to-do list. And then the next week,
They're like, it's the worst thing in the world.
the worst thing in the world. So you can beat
That makes
yourself
sense.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you know how your body works, you can then work with that.
Yeah.
So I have a list. I call it my luteal list. And that phase of my month, I go in on that list. And
So
Malin will tell me too. She'll be like, are we in our luteal week?
But even that is a good reminder. Like, right, that's obviously Malin, someone that you spend a lot of time with. It's important for your people
Yes.
around you to understand that. to understand
100%.
when not to ask you for certain tasks, or to be okay when you are clearly not doing the task that you're naturally seeing, right? If you have a dirty house or
Yes.
whatever, first of all, you could maybe help the person clean it.
Yep.
But at the same time, like that those little things matter.
It
I mean,
really
maybe so
does.
could someone that's listening to this, if they don't obviously aren't doing direct coaching with you on that, could they maybe set a hourly alarm that pops up on their phone that says, how do you feel? And they just jot down a note and
Absolutely.
just try to pay attention. Because I know I don't necessarily do it that tediously, but I absolutely have paid a lot of attention to when I'm in a fantastic mood. What the heck did I just do?
Yep.
When I'm in a terrible mood, what did I just do?
Yep.
And really try to pay attention to what I am doing that is making me in a bad mood.
Yeah, and you can ask yourself like the who, what, when, where, why type of thing, because sometimes what I have found in working with both myself and like hundreds of women is that a lot of times it's who you're with
Yeah, I believe that 100%.
is like a huge indicator, which is why our jobs and the people that we work with are so important. And
Why culture's so
and
important
why
in the
culture
business.
is
Yep.
so incredibly
Yep.
important. Yeah. But yeah, just noticing, I think the first step, I love the idea of having something on your phone to just constantly remind you of
And I'm sure there's
how
even
am I
apps like
feeling. Oh,
maybe we'll try to
probably.
list them out and things, but there are definitely apps that are for habit trackers and stuff.
Oh yeah, because I'm not like the first person
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I learned it from my coach. So
Right.
that type of thing. But the awareness piece, I think, is a huge part of this conversation because we say, okay, well, what morning routine works for Michaela? I'm going to do that to a T. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're not me.
Right.
You don't have my life. You're
Yeah.
not, hopefully you're not a single mom. That's the hardest thing in the world, right? Like, hopefully you have a partner. Hopefully you have this, that, and
Right.
the other thing. Even somebody who has the same, you might be
Right.
a single mom. You might also be an entrepreneur, but our personalities are different. My energy is different than yours in the morning, that type of
Yep.
thing. So,
And that's why it's important to take pieces of things.
yes.
Talk with a bunch of people and ask what
Yep.
their morning routines are. That's all good.
Yeah.
But don't say, all right, which morning routine do I like the best? Just choose the pieces that, okay, which
Yeah.
one's realistic for me in
Yep.
my season? And maybe
That's a huge one.
that whole idea of the morning routine, talking to people that are in your season of life, if you have people surrounding you, which naturally we both recommend.
Yes.
That you try to have some people that are in a different stage of life, but some people that are in your stage or past your stage, but still can at least help you with relatable things
Yeah,
of how
100%.
and then so if you have a morning routine and you're someone that has young kids, it's easier to at least understand, okay,
Yeah.
theirs are going to be a little bit more realistic versus the 20-year-old who's hustling, trying to build a huge business. They have
Yeah.
all the time in the world. They have nothing to complain about.
Yes.
They have, or
Yes.
not nothing to complain. I'm sorry, nothing to they have all the freedom.
Right.
Realistically, nothing's
Right.
holding them down.
Yeah.
Where it's different.
It is. I speak to a lot of colleges as well, and so I'm always talking to college students, and it really cracks me up when they're like, "I'm just so busy."
You're like, that's cute.
I know, I really do.
I remember when I thought I was busy too. And it's not that
remember.
we're not downplaying that people can be busy, but there's people just don't understand the kids and understand
Yeah.
what certain phases of life do to your availability to do anything else.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter how many hobbies I want to take on or how many things. There are just certain things I cannot do unless something else does not get done.
Yes.
Where when you're younger and let's say you're not married, which if you're not married, you basically are not tied down yet. And you aren't, and maybe if you're even still living at home, I don't know. You just don't have the same thing. You realistically can do anything other outside of your 9-to-5 job
Yeah.
if you work a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
But I think that's also when we were talking about before, what gets so difficult for a lot of new business owners and new entrepreneurs is, especially if you're someone that struggles with ADHD or struggles with focus on things, is that you can naturally get yourself in trouble because you want to be an entrepreneur and a business owner to have freedom and to have all the flexibility, but not realizing that your brain doesn't do good in that environment.
Yeah.
So what you end up doing is nothing on a regular basis because you actually need structure in some form
Yes.
to make you actually do good work.
Yep.
But when you're the boss, no one's creating the structure for you. So it
Yep.
feels really good. 'Cause
Yeah.
you can do anything you want with your time. Unfortunately, you usually don't do productive work with it. So then you have 2 hours a day where you're like, I crushed it today. What about the other ones?
Yeah, I know.
So it can be hard. That can
It-
get people in trouble.
For sure. I think if I could go back in time and give myself advice of the girl in the, in the driveway after just saying, I need something to change here, of start with something, but then quickly adapt,
Mm-hmm.
quickly shift, and don't be afraid to quote unquote break the mold.
Yep.
Because you and Hal lead different lives,
Yep.
and that's okay. But give yourself the freedom and the flexibility
Yep.
to make it work for you. And this is the other big shift I wish I would have known. It is significantly less important what time you wake up and significantly more important what time you go to bed
Mm-hmm.
every single night.
Yep.
Because if you're not sleeping well,
Mm-hmm.
then sure, you can get up 4 o'clock in the morning every single day, but your brain is not in an optimal state
No.
to do much with that
No.
day. And you do that again and again and again, and the only thing you focus on is your morning routine, you're going to end up causing yourself
Yeah.
some serious pain. So I recently switched to, what does my evening
Mhm.
routine look like?
Yep. Because as a parent, that's actually more flexible.
Exactly. For sure. And you're teaching your kids something that they can actually see. Whereas
Yep.
a lot of times, like if you get up
Yeah, that's a good
before
point.
in the morning,
Yeah.
they don't see you in your morning
Yep.
routine, but they do see a lot of the evening routine.
Yep. That's
So
interesting.
something for me that I do is like 90 minutes. Okay. If I want to go to bed every night at 10 o'clock, 90 minutes, so 8:30 is when I start unwinding.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what happens. We all know how to ramp up, right? I can drink some coffee, I can take energy, whatever.
Yeah.
We know how to ramp up,
Yeah.
but most of us don't know how to ramp down. So learning how to like unwind is really important. I turn screens off 90 minutes before we go to bed. Turn down the lights
Mhm.
if you can. Even like if you put candles on is kind
Mhm.
of nice at that time. I tidy up. I fix up my little area for my morning
Mm-hmm.
area. I put my, blanket out. I put my journal out. Like I just have everything so it's ready. I have a little aromatherapy that's right next to me for when I do my little quick quiet time in the morning. And then I unwind, whether I read
Yep.
a chapter or I do my skincare routine, do some breath work, and I journal a little bit,
Yep.
just in reflection of how was my day.
Yep.
And I asked Malin those questions of, what was your high and your low? And we always end up having really good conversations about her day. Because you ask your kids, how was
Yeah.
school? Great.
Yeah.
Fine.
Or Connor, terrible, bad. I could have the time.
You get one word answers, right? But then you talk to them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What was the high of your day? What was
Yeah.
the low of your day? And then you actually end up having this conversation. So I think it teaches your kids so much to have that evening routine going.
And here's what I want to say that would be hopefully an encouragement to people listening. All the things she just said that are her evening routine, none of those things are what I do whatsoever, nor would they be beneficial for me. And yet I sleep really, really well. So it's just, and that's not to say you're doing it wrong. It's more just to get people to realize like you're different than other people. All the stuff she just said may totally relate
You don't
to
have
you.
a skincare routine?
No, they may totally relate, and putting devices down, all that. There's a ton of people that will say that works really well.
Well, and there's a lot of science to that. But
Exactly,
yes, yes.
totally. No, but the whole point being that you don't have to copy someone's. You
Right.
have to understand just what do you need to do to unwind.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Yep.
And if you at least can get in a rhythm that says, now if you're someone that's desperately struggling to go to sleep, 100% you should probably change what you're doing and figure that out.
Yes.
If I'm someone that has no problem going right to sleep,
Yeah.
then I don't necessarily have to change anything.
Right.
And I actually spend less time necessarily thinking about like what my evening routine is because
It's
I
a
just have no
habit.
problem going to sleep. But yet I play the exact same song every night. I actually look at my phone or watch something on YouTube or whatever, or TikTok or whatever, literally up until I set it down and then I go to sleep. And I have no problem going right to sleep because my brain just does that.
Yeah.
But that's also definitely not recommended for people. So
That's
but-
not the norm, but yeah.
but because I know it's not messing me up, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
But same with the morning routines, just understanding what you need to do to get yourself in a productive state, to get
Yeah.
yourself in a creative state, an admin state, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And maybe those routines, morning and evening routines, might also change depending on the day of the week.
For sure.
Right? You don't have to necessarily do the same thing on a Saturday morning as you do on a Monday morning or a Wednesday morning. And depending on the
Yeah.
work you do, where
Right.
with a couple different businesses that we both have, it's like I might have to wake up incredibly early to go do a task for a job that is not normally what I have to do.
Yeah.
And so I have to figure out, okay, well, is it now possible for me to do the same morning routine? So just even thinking about that.
Right.
Or being smart enough to realize if it's crucial that I get that 60 minutes of time, then you have to build your schedule around being able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same thing with an evening routine. Like,
Yep.
don't schedule things if it's super important for you.
Right.
Or make sure they're scheduled later.
Right.
Or realize if this is going to be a 7 a.m. task, am I okay still doing my routine because it's vitally important at 4 o'clock in the morning? You know what I mean?
Right. What I'm hearing too, this like constant word that keeps coming to my mind is reflection. And which is something I feel like a lot of people don't do, is we don't reflect.
Yep.
And if you can reflect and think to yourself, what do I need in the mornings? What do I need more of in the mornings?
Yep.
For me, it was peace,
Yeah.
calm, like giving myself a moment. So I prioritize doing those things. For you, that might look different
Yep.
because you as a person are different and your season is different
Yep.
than mine. And same thing with the evenings. Like I can't even tell you. I went snowboarding over the weekend for the
I
first
saw
time
your
ever.
story.
Yeah. And
And
I
and
did
you're not broken.
I did
How
pretty
about that?
good.
How about that?
I did pretty good, guys.
A lot of people have terrible stories
I
when
know.
they go for the first time.
Well, Ryan was really good when the
Good
way he
teacher.
taught me
Yeah.
too. Because we stayed on the bunny hill. We kept it real simple. But anyways, over that weekend we were with a ton of our friends, and so many of the women were saying, my mind does not shut off at night. Like they just have
Yeah.
the hardest time falling asleep. And so even in that of saying, okay, what's happening in my evenings that I would really like to not happen? And what do I need? Because those two answers will help you with whatever your solution might be.
I just thought about something that maybe is why the media consumption potentially works for me. I'm a person that naturally my brain's always going a million miles an hour, right? Maybe why what I do actually works so well for me is the stuff that I consume at night makes me not think about the life tasks, the business tasks. I'll watch gun videos to random like TikTok videos that have zero significance to a point in my life. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't listen to inspirational things. I don't
Yeah.
listen to like business things on like YouTube. I watch random
Yep.
dumb stuff.
Yep.
And maybe what my brain's actually doing is eliminating all the real life things I have. And it's actually shut off an hour ago when I'm watching those, that when I put it down, it's no longer thinking.
Exactly.
Maybe that's what it is.
It very well could be, for sure. Because I will tell
So maybe
people,
even for some people that are like that pay attention to their phone, maybe what are you watching?
yeah.
What are you consuming? Maybe you're
'cause-
consuming things that are making your brain go more. If I start
Yeah.
listening to tons of top 10 tips to build your business, I'm going to bed with all this like, oh, that's good. I got to think more about that.
Exactly.
That might be terrible.
Yep.
I just thought about that.
I know. Like, for example, if you're a soon-to-be bride and you go to bed and you just watch...
Say yes to the dress.
Yes, yes. Or a bunch of TikToks on
Right.
wedding planning or whatever, you're revving
Yeah.
your brain up. Because even I asked some of the girls that were saying they couldn't get their mind to stop, and I asked them, well, what are you thinking about? And so those types of things, essentially, a lot of them, what they were saying to me was like their to-do lists or things they
Right.
didn't get done, or like, so all this anxious stuff was coming up. So pretty much what you're turning on is the stress system in your body.
Yep.
So that's your sympathetic branch of your nervous system. It's like the fight or flight, you're getting anxious. When what you need is your parasympathetic branch to be turned on, which is your rest and digest. So Yeah, it's just, again,
Yeah.
understanding your body and how you work and what kind of gets your brain going. That's interesting.
I just randomly thought about that because I definitely, all the stuff that I consume at night is literally nothing that I go to bed thinking more about. It's literally just entertainment value,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's random education things in there. Like if I don't know, whatever they're suggesting I watch, but it's definitely not something that I go to bed processing more.
Yeah. Which was hard for me because most of what I read is business.
Yeah, of course.
Self-development,
and
neuroscience.
podcasts and all that kind of stuff. Usually it's all about that.
Yeah. So I had to learn how to pick up books
Yeah.
that didn't make my brain
that
go.
were just a story. That
Yes.
wasn't something you were trying to like self-help stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think hopefully what we're trying to explain is just there's no perfect morning routine.
Right.
There's no perfect evening routine. There's the routine that works best for you and that self-evaluation and really reflection of figuring out how do I feel in the mornings? How do I feel at night? And do I want to change something? And if I do, I need to pay attention to it, right? We need to evaluate, look at things. I love the tracker thing you were saying about keeping track throughout the day of just how you're doing, reminder.
Yeah.
There's a journaling app that I actually use a lot if you're someone that is big into non-paper journals called Day One. This is not sponsored at all, but I've been using it for like 8 years. But you can have it remind you at certain times a day to write in it, and it can also even give you a template like
That's cool.
it could say how do you feel right now, you can have it do it at certain times or whatever. So even if you need tools like that, but because it is important to just think about how do you feel and why, and just remind yourself, because then you will very quickly see, like you said, those triggers that you are not realizing are playing a massive factor.
Huge.
And it can make a big difference. So good stuff.
Love it. We would love to know what you guys think too in the comments. Like, is there a morning routine structure that has worked well for you? Feel free to share it because I always think that, I mean, I learned so much from other people.
Absolutely.
I'm all about collective wisdom.
And also comment, are you more of a morning person or an evening person? Because really this episode turned more into routines in general.
Yeah.
Morning or evening.
Yeah.
So.
I love where it went.
You're a morning person, evening person. If you're a morning person, then grab your coffee and let's get going.
And
thanks
reflect.
for being here. Yes.
Reflect, yeah. Yeah, thanks for being here, you guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.